Again, I'm Engineer Hilary Obaloker, currently Member of Parliament for Preparedness County, Lamour District, and Minister for Disaster Preparedness and Refugees, Republic of Uganda. I was born on 5th of May, 1948, to my parents, Samson Oto, and my mother, Jera Ayo. We are from Parabek Game, Pakara clan. My father, my late father, worked in the army. He was a soldier. He joined the army when he was still a teenager, around 1939. And that time Uganda was a British protectorate and we were a colony, more or less. So he fought in the Second World War in Somalia with Italians, and also in Ethiopia with Italians, and he moved on and they fought Japanese in India and Burma, and by the end of the Second World War they came back and they were in the military barracks of Nanyuki in Kenya. During that period he was still a bachelor, a young man, but in 1946 that's when he got my mother. He came for leave, past leave. He got my mother and Jera Ayo, and they got married. He continued service in the army. Then my mother gave birth to her first son. And then I was a second born to my mother. And my elder brother, we grew up as a family. And in 1954-55, when the Mau Mau rebellion started in Kenya, my father decided to leave working in the army because some of his friends with whom they fought in the Second World War were now in the Mau Mau movement. They were fighting the British. So he did not want to fight his colleagues who are now rebel to the British government that time. And the British wanted to use was using now the army, the existing army at the time, which includes my father, to go to fight their colleagues who are the Mau Mau. So he opted to leave the army in 1954, and later on he joined Public Works Department, PIDA. And that time when he joined Public Works Department, my mother produced, we were now 2 children, me and my elder brother. Then my follower was a sister, was also born thereafter. And in the Ministry of Works, where he was working, PIDA, he worked first of all on Entebbe Road at a place called, I think, Najana Kumbi. There was a Ministry of Works, PIDA there. After training at Kyambogo, you know, the Ministry of Works used to train their personnel in Kyambogo on road maintenance. And then afterwards from Entebbe Road, he was transferred to Mubende Road in a place called Kiganda. That's when my follower was born there. My sister, one of my sisters again, was born there in Kiganda on Mubende Road. And then from Mubende Road he was transferred again to Hoima Road. I don't remember the name of the exact place, but From Hoima Road, he only worked there for only 1 year, then he was transferred to Soroti. He was in charge of the road between Soroti and Dokoro on Lira Road. He used to manage those roads. There, that's when we lived in a place called Utuboi on the way to Lira. That's where I started my primary one in a school called Amida Khan Primary School. But before I could even finish my P1, he was transferred again to Moroto. That was 1957. And in Moroto, he was put on Moroto Soroti Road at a place called Lorengechora in Karamoja. In Lorengechora, there was no school. After I wasted 1 year without going to school that time, and then he was transferred. Then from there, he pleaded that he should be taken where the school was. Then he was moved to a place called Kangole. Kangole is where the missionary school, the Catholic missionary school was. That's where I went for my primaries until I completed there. From there, he was now not moved anywhere because he really kept pleading that he had a family, he needed their children to go to school. So he worked in Karamoja up to 1974. He was in Karamoja. And I went to school in Kangole Primary School. And then when I finished the primary level, I went to junior school there. And in 1964, I did my junior living primary, examination, equivalent today to P7 primary living examination. I passed quite well. I got a pass grade, and I was, I think, the best in the district. Then the priests who were my teachers, my head teacher was a priest called Father Charles. When he saw my results, he said, no, you cannot go, because I had put my first choice to Tororo College. But he said, no, we shall take you to a better school, a Catholic school. So he forwarded me to Kisubi, St. Mary's College, Kisubi, where I went to senior one there from 1965 up to 1970, when I finished my O level, and I moved on to A level in the same school, St. Mary's College, Kisubi. In A level, I did mathematics, physics, and chemistry too. And art. I was targeting engineering. I passed quite well, and I moved on to Makerere. But at the time when I joined Makerere in 1971, is the period when Idi Amin took over government. And when Idi Amin took over government, it became very difficult. We lost some few relatives who were in the army. My elder brother had joined the army that time. My elder brother Caesar had joined the army. And he was in the army in 1965. He joined the army. He did not want to read. So after primary living or junior school, he just joined the army. And he was that time in Moroto, in the 2nd Battalion. And when the war, when Amin took over and they were purging their Cholis and Langi, killing them, my brother ran away to exile to Nairobi. And from Nairobi, I think he went up to Mombasa. He was staying there during the period of Amin time. At the university that time, we had difficulties because we were student activists. I was a very active member of NUSU, National Union of Students of Uganda. I was a very active member. That time we were more or less, we were really doing student politics, and we were more leaning towards the left. That means we were social. And definitely when Amin came to power, we were all opposed to Amin ascending to power because we knew that he was illiterate and brutal. He could not. But then that opposition from the student leadership caused us dearly because we lost some of our students. They were killed by Amin's agents, and it became difficult to study at Makerere University. So when I was in my 2nd year, it became really impossible to continue. And that's when I looked for an avenue to get out of the country. And there was a scholarship committee in the Ministry of Education. We used to give scholarship to students to go out to study. I went there. There was somebody called, it was a permanent secretary or the chairman of the scholarship committee, somebody called Ignatius Latigo. Ignatius Latigo, I came later on to find out he was from Koro here in Guru. And he gave us scholarships to go to Eastern Europe. I chose to go to Russia, to Soviet Union that time, where I went to study engineering, continued to study engineering, and I studied engineering there and finished my master's degree and moved on to do postgraduate studies. I was that time doing research. I was working in a research laboratory where we would research materials and design structures. So I continued working there for over a year. Meanwhile, doing my initial stages of research for PhD. In 1980, because Amin was overthrown in 1979, April, but we were so anxious to return home. So I came back home in 1980. I came back home in 1980, the month of May. That time, Makerere University had already offered me a job as a lecturer. The university professor Nserko Jagenda, had gone around Europe looking for qualified Ugandans to be recruited to come to teach at Makerere University. So when he came and found me in Moscow, Institute of Civil Engineering, where I was doing research and development, he persuaded me to come and join Makerere to teach in the Faculty of Technology, that is engineering. So I came in May after finishing off a certain level of research. And I came, and immediately Makerere University gave me the job. I started work in June 1980. At Makerere University, I was teaching structural engineering for civil engineers, structural engineering and hydrology and hydraulics. I taught hydraulics or water engineering. I was teaching water engineering and structures. Now, I taught at Makerere for 2 years, for 3 years actually. But our pay was very low that time. And I had lost my father that time. When I came home, briefly, I thought I would teach only for 1 or 2 years, 1 or 2 years, and go back to finish my research, PhD research. But during the first year when I was teaching there, when I came, that's when I lost my dad. And when I lost my dad, then my mother also had broken her leg and was more or less disabled. Now I had a challenge. I had younger sisters and brothers still in school, 3 of them, 2 sisters and 1 brother. So now the little money I was getting from Makerere, I had to start paying now school fees and looking after those challenges left by my father. And my mother was disabled and not able to do it. So I informed the university to give me another 1 more dead year to enable me to confront these problems. And by that time, another university in Canada called University of Edmonton, they were very much interested in my original publications when I was doing my research in Moscow, because in my research that time I introduced a new idea in structural engineering of integrating time as a fourth factor that affects structures. Because the original structural design engineering was only looking at the 3 dimensions, but they never looked at time as a major factor. So when I integrated that time, I developed beautiful hypotheses with a formula that would be able to really integrate the longevity of a structure into its integrity, into its capacity to stay usable. And Canada also invited me to go and continue do the research there in Canada, continue my research and write my papers from there. But then again, Canada had to postpone even that. I told them, because I had that load of paying school fees and looking after my sick mother, my mother would have broken the leg and so on. So I sacrificed all those opportunities, and I continued for 3 years at Makerere. Now, because Makerere was not paying us well, I opted to look elsewhere outside. There was another advertisement that time which came for the position of chief engineer in National Water and Sewerage Corporation. And the salary was more attractive, it was almost 3 times what I was getting at Makerere. So I applied for it. That time I was not yet married, I was still a young man. I applied for it. When I went for the interview, they first of all reluctantly even accepted me to come and attend the interview, because I was underage. They wanted somebody 35 years and above. I was about 3 to 4 years younger. So when I went for the interview, I did everything very well. They were all very surprised with my knowledge and capacity to address water challenges. But then the chairman then at the time asked me, but now, by all the same, you are underage. Why would you think you can do this job when you are a young man like this? And I told them, look, if you want old age, you take them. But for me, I know the substance. Then they laughed at me and chased me away. I thought I'd lost the job. But then in 1 week, after 1 week, I found they sent me a letter inviting me to become chief engineer at National Water. And that's the time I realized now, they've given me a bigger responsibility. I should find a way of settling down. In other words, getting married. So I moved on. In water, there were a lot of challenges. In water, there was a lot of challenges because during a meantime, everything broke down and they were not renovated or repaired. There was even no money. The organization had no money. We were dependent on money from Ministry of Finance, giving us every month to even pay salaries and so on. Old Kampala, for example, the taps were all dry and the pipes were all rotten because over a period of 5 years there was no water flowing into the system. And then when I checked at the water works where the water is pumped from, I found out that all the filters were clogged, blocked. They could not filter water. I found out all the pumps were rusty and obsolete. The water treatment system, we used to use chlorine to dose the water and so forth, treat them, were also not operational. So what I did, I moved down to the water works. I stationed myself there to restore those systems. With the water filters, we overhaul the whole thing, remove all the media, clean and so forth, and then reset the whole thing afresh. With the pumps, there were 15 pumps which pump water to Kampala from the old water works. Now about 3 or 4 were able to run. The rest were stuck. I had to dismantle all of them. We broke them into pieces again and picked the usable parts and assembled some 8 pumps which would be running. And then I moved on the water treatment, the water treatment plant system, like the chemicals. We also restored an alternative method of using, instead of liquid chlorine, we are using now powdered chlorine to treat the water. And when we restored that, and we used, the good thing is that in the waterworks there was a lathe machines where you can cut and fabricate spare parts. So we used to fabricate spare parts. We used to fabricate all those shafts and so on and so on. And we were able to restore water, running water in Kampala. But then the problem in Kampala again, not only Kampala, Jinja the same story, Entebbe the same story. So we're all doing the same thing everywhere. I set up my boys as chief engineer, I set up my team, and I would be making sure they were working. And the piping system in the city were also all rotten now because there was no water. Air got in, with a little water moisture which is inside, they were rusty, finished. So we need also to replace the pipes, some of them. And so we did a lot of work and restored the water in Kampala. Within 5 months, we restored water in the taps of Kampala. That's when, that time, a minister was Chaudhry, Mr. Chaudhry, the Honorable Chaudhry Lukwang was that time Minister for Water. When he found out within 5 months of my stay, the water came back into the system, he was so excited. Now, he opted to elevate me to a position of managing director, which I protested, because I was enjoying myself as an engineer other than an administrator. But then, because he threatened I would be sacked if I refused the appointment, what I decided to do is I left the administration to company secretary, and I was always in the field doing my work. And later on, my effort was recognized by the European Union, by the German GIZ. They now gave some money to buy new pumps, to replace some few things. So from there we progressed on. The World Bank came in 1985 with money to support my effort to restore the water in Kampala. And not only in Kampala, Jinja, Entebbe, Mbarara, Masaka, all those Tororo, Mbale, all those places. So I must say it was a very successful operation. And that is my technical background in that area. And later on, as managing director, we advanced further to other towns which were not covered by that time. My achievement in the water sector gave me the profile, which to date, at least I'm trusted professionally. And for about 7 years, I became, up to last year, from about 2007 up to last year, I was actually voted and appointed to head all engineers of Uganda. I was the patron of the entire, all engineers in Uganda. I was the one monitoring them and mentoring the young engineers and so forth. And with additional responsibility given to me by my people of Parabek and Lamuo, when I became member of parliament, definitely the government, the president recognized my competence and elevated me to be a cabinet minister from 2006 to date, up to now. I was first Minister for Agriculture for 3 years, then I became Minister for Energy for 2 years, I became Minister for Internal Affairs, and now I'm in the office of the Prime Minister, as in charge of disaster preparedness and refugees, which I'm holding up to now. And in this office, in my current office, I generated an idea of supporting host communities, districts which are hosting refugees, supporting them with additional infrastructure in order to support the schools, health centers, infrastructure like bridges, roads, and so forth. And my my request to the international community, including the World Bank, European Union, and others, yielded. The World Bank gave us initially, in the last 3 years, we've been using about $200 million from 2017, 2018, up to last year. The World Bank gave us about $200 million, which we are using under Dr. Deep, a project called Dr. Deep. Dr. Deep is meaning Development Response to Displacement Impact Project. That is the abbreviation, is Dr. Deep. I'm able to handle the 15 districts where refugees are. We have built schools, built health centers, bridges. We are doing roads. Like we are currently tarmacking the road between Moyo, Yumbe, and Koboko. And we have included a number of roads, including the road from Kitgum, Parabek-Atiak, from Parabek to Gulu, to be tarmacked under this project. In other words, a refugee program now, where I am, because I vouch for supporting the host communities, is now become like a development arm of government. We are now developing some of these districts where the refugees are. And that is that far how we have reached. And I'm grateful to my people of Lamour for really entrusting me and putting me in the position as their member of parliament for all these years, now going to 23. By the end of next year, I will have been 25 years in parliament and serving as a cabinet minister for 20 years. And my contributions, or rather my contribution through government is evident, is seen from the few achievements, a few landmark improvement in certain areas, in many areas. So that's what I am and what I will continue to be. I'm looking towards my retirement, although my people of Parabek said, no, don't retire now. We want you still to continue another 5 years. I'm still examining that request. I'm looking at the usefulness of adding more years. Because there are a lot of young men who are now teaming up. They want to go to parliament, and it seems I'm viewed as a roadblock. But it is the population that decides. They are seeing my usefulness of being in parliament and also in government. So that's what it is. Thank you very much.